invite him to a tab meeting and throw a few of our acronyms around at him and see how he does.
I think he'll be fine.
Yeah,
he may have been front and center on preserving the South Shore commuter rail line to South Bend.
The acronym language is another language with another 5.
Well, he's just
IT. We have more fun.
Yeah. My experience with him at the U.S. Conference of Mayors is he's a smart, thoughtful young guy, and real even, and he'll do a good job, as Mary said.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to work. It is the week before the Christmas week, and all of the best to every one of you for the holidays. However you celebrate them, be safe, stay healthy, and we'll call the meeting to order. And if we, I think if we do what we've usually been doing here the past couple of meetings, we try to do roll call and approve the agenda in a single motion. Let's do that. So, Jenna, would you please, Ms. Ernst, would you call the meeting? I'll call it to order. You do the roll call and the approval of the agenda. We'll handle that with double ayes.
Anderson. Anderson.
Doug? Oh, he was with us. He was with us for the exec.
Bailey.
I am both.
Barber.
I am both.
Barnes.
I am both.
Boyles. Boyles.
Present and I.
Crimmins.
Aye and yes.
Dugan.
Aye on both.
Foster.
I on both.
Fox.
Present and aye.
Geisler.
Present and I.
Giuliani Stevens.
Present and I.
Gattell. Gattell.
Oh.
Raymond Roland.
Present and I.
Hanson.
Present and aye.
Holberg.
Here and yes.
Hollinshead.
Aye on both.
Karwoski.
Present and I.
Lindeke.
Present and I.
Look.
Present and aye.
Malichnik.
Present and aye.
Buin.
Present and I.
McGuire.
Kim, can you hang on a second?
Naryanin.
Present and I.
Petrick.
Present and I.
Reich.
Present and I.
Sanger.
Here and yes.
Schember.
Present and I.
Stephenson.
Present and I.
Swanson. Or Jepson. Tolbert. Ulrich.
Aye on both.
Shuttle.
Aye.
Washing.
I to both.
And Ms. Ernst, Mr. Anderson is here.
Okay, I will record him.
Thank you.
I did. I'm just going to step in. I'm getting a couple emails from people that asking them to resend the link, so I am doing that. So there may have been some mistakes with the double email that went out.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, we'd get our full participation here. So we're going to go now to reports. I'm thinking I've got a lot to report out on. We just had an hour and a half long exec committee meeting and went through the agenda items there, talked a little bit about some of the things that we're working on from a staff standpoint and internally, equity being one of them. And we've had a couple of equity discussions about how we should deal with the issue of equity. You know, we talked about that in the last solicitation.
40.
We wanted to meet with folks in areas of concentrated poverty to find out what their needs were. There was a presumption that transit would be helpful, since we know in North Minneapolis, for example, in that 56 square block area, only half the people have access to a motor vehicle.
Okay, sounds great.
But beyond that, we weren't sure what would be important from a transportation standpoint. But with the pandemic, of course, we can't do that. So we're talking now about how we can ground ourselves more effectively in the topic. And so we've had a couple of conversations I have with staff, me, Nick Thompson, Deb Barber from the council, Amy Venowitz from staff, and Elaine, about how we can get the educational backgrounding set in the virtual world. And then maybe by the time everybody has a vaccine, maybe second quarter, third quarter, we can think about some of these face-to-face meetings with folks in the broader community. So I'm going to have Elaine send out the minutes to everybody from these two meetings that we've had internally and ask you to look them over and give me your ideas, give us your ideas on what you think we should be making sure that we cover, or possible speakers that we may want to have come in to talk on this topic, because we'll have most of the rest of the year to deal with this topic, make a decision on how to score equity and how to include equity in the next regional solicitation, probably in November, if memory serves me correctly. Is that about right, Elaine, from a timing standpoint?
Correct.
Okay. All right, good. So I'll ask Elaine to get those minutes out to all of you, and then please share your thoughts. We talked a little bit about the TAB Exec Committee. You know, folks have until the end of the month to indicate an interest there in the Exec Committee. We have had some people express interest, and we've actually got a full slate already. If you are still interested, though, make sure you let us know by the 31st. We were short of members for the cities. We needed 2. Now we have 3 people interested in that. And we've got 2 mayors and a city council member, Mark Windshuttle and Mark Stephenson, mayors of Chaska and Maple Grove, respectively, and then Gary Hansen from Egan. The way we've usually handled this in the past, when we've had county board members, we've had more interested than actually can occupy the exec committee. We've had them just discuss the matter amongst themselves, and we've always worked it out without having to have a vote at TAB on who's going to serve. So Mark, Gary, and Mark, I would ask the 3 of you to at least have a preliminary conversation about seeing if we can end up with 2 out of the 3 of you coming forward there, so that we have a slate put together that we don't have to vote on. I think that it's better if we can do that. And then I see Commissioner Holberg's on the line. You know, she has been very ably chairing this Governor's Blue Ribbon Committee on the Metropolitan Council structure and services. The governor sent out an executive order several months ago, setting up a panel of 15 members chaired by Commissioner Holberg, and I can let her comment quickly too. The final report, I think, is due out this week, but she'll have better knowledge on that. The 3 questions the governor asked the panel to address were the role of elected versus appointed Metropolitan Council members. Secondly, the Metropolitan Council's role as the Metropolitan Planning Organization in identify and evaluate the ways this federal designation may complement or conflict with the council's responsibilities under Minnesota law. And then the third item the governor wanted us to address was the effectiveness of the delivery of regional transit service. So we have completed our work. We have, I think, a report in almost final form. And Commissioner Holberg, would you want to comment on status as we get close to the end of that work and the release of that report?
Sure. My understanding, I'm working on just some final technical edits and a little bit more feedback on one of the minority points. The submission letter is dated for the 21st of this month, so I think that's the date we're shooting for, is I believe that's Monday. So I know some paperwork is being delivered to the Met Council tomorrow.
Okay.
So we're close.
All right. Thank you. Anybody have any questions there? I think best just to wait for the report. The body of the report itself is, I think, approximately 20 pages, but with all of the documentation that we reviewed, the total report will be in excess of 300 pages in length. And it was some good work done by that committee, as I said, led so ably by Commissioner Holberg. And then at exec today, we talked a little bit about the federal funds reallocation policy. We've got a standing policy on how we deal with money that doesn't get expended and gets turned back. The funding and programming and staff and TAC wanted a little bit of guidance from the exec committee on specifically that aspect of those federal funds that deal with congestion mitigation air quality funds. And so we gave some general guidance there, and then staff's going to come up with a recommendation. And then that'll come to the full tab, I think, in February after funding and programming looks at that staff recommendation. And also TAC looks at it, and then they'll provide us with their recommendations as well. So I think we can have a real fruitful conversation on that. And I think those are the main items I wanted to report out on. But then I did also want to recognize we've got some outgoing members. And then we'll have some new folks coming in January. Don't know who those folks are yet, but we're losing some real talent here. And hate to see them go. Randy, and we're going to make sure, usually when we're in chambers, we get to have this nice little celebration and we get to have a few calories with a beautiful sheet cake. And now we're going to have virtual cake. All of you get to save calories and reallocate them some other way. And so we're losing Randy Malushnik from Carver County. These are all real losses, folks, as we all know. Jan Callison from Hennepin County is retiring. Mary Heyman Rowland is moving on from mayor of Apple Valley to become a commissioner in Dakota County. Dick Swanson from Blaine, Jeff Washy, who would, I think, love to stay on as mayor of Plymouth, but under the policies of the Suburban Transit Authority that he represents, he's got to move on and somebody else will be taking his place. And then Jerry McDonald as the alternate is stepping down from the STA. And then Lisa Fries is the outgoing TAC chair, and she'll be replaced by John Solberg from the MnDOT. And it's an agency turn for the TAC chair, and so John Solberg has agreed to take that mantle up as chair. So I'm going to give some of the folks that are present that are departing a moment or two to their experience at TAB. Randy Malushnik, do you want to lead us off?
I'll try to be short and sweet, which is not my nature, but it's certainly the TAB work that I've done in the last 12 years has been probably the most rewarding work that I've done as a county commissioner. And I've learned a great deal, but the thing that I'd like to leave you with is this regional government works a lot better when we all look out for each other. So that'll be my parting words, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, and thank everybody, and I really appreciate working with you all over these years. Thank you.
Those are certainly succinct words of wisdom. Thank you, Commissioner. I know Jan's not with us. Mary Heyman Rowland is, though. Mayor Mary?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the members. This has been a wonderful experience for me over the years to be able to serve with people who really care about, as Randy had said, care about our region. And you care deeply that you would take this extra time to be able to do the tough work that it takes to be a Transportation Advisory Board member. And so I want to say thank you to all. Thank you for the friendships that have developed over this time. And I really appreciate each and every one of you. And for those that are continuing, thanks for doing the great work that you'll continue to do. Mr. Chair, you do a marvelous job. There was a time when I served on TAB that it wasn't as collegial and collaborative. And you have really done an exceptional job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Oh. Yeah. All right. And then is Dick Swanson with us today? And then Jeff Washy, Mayor Washy. Hate to lose you.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I really appreciate that. And I am really going to miss this group of people. I've been on for 4 years now, and boy, those 4 years go fast. And in fact, it just feels like I've been able to finally start getting into a groove with the whole pattern and flow a 2-year process that TAB goes through. I'm going to miss everyone here. It's been my pleasure and my honor to be able to serve on TAB. I think TAB is just a great representation of when you bring a bunch of people together, especially look at all the electeds that are on this body and how we're all looking out for the best interests of the region. You know, everyone wants to make sure funds are dispersed equitably and that we just do a good job looking out for the region as a whole. And I think that's just, you know, tipping my hat to everybody here, that you do that, look out for everyone's interests. So I'm going to miss this group. Jim, I've really enjoyed working with you, especially on TAB as you're chairing it. And just wish everyone the best as we go into the holidays and next year, 2021.
Thank you, Mayor. And Lisa, outgoing TAC chair, you've done a marvelous job there for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I won't say much other than it's been a pleasure to get to work with all of you and get to know you a little better through the 3 years that I've been in this position. And I know John will do a great job, and I will still be serving on TAC, so I hope to continue to make connections with you back when we can have regular meetings again.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, for all of you that are departing, I was sitting here thinking about, I think it was Monday, I was on a call with a group of mayors. We had met about a year ago out in New York City. We got invited to this Mayor's Design Institute, and we had this 3-day session. And one of the mayors was a African-American mayor and a preacher from Union City, Georgia. And we got done with this little virtual reunion after about an hour and a half. Vince Williams is his name, and he looks at all of us on the screen and doing the same thing with respect to all of you that are departing. He said, "I love you all, and there's nothing you can do about it." So take those thoughts with you as you depart. Those members we're losing that were so valuable to the TAB. Keep us in mind. We'll keep you in our mind and hearts. And we wish you all the best, and we'll see you down the road somewhere.
Mr. Chair, how about a round of applause? We can all kind of do that.
There you go. Thank you. That's a good way to do it. Thanks, Commissioner, for that idea. Let's move on to agency reports. Mike Barnes. Oh, and for those people that are departing, you know, you're probably sitting there wondering, well, where's my great plaque? And where's that photo that I'm going to have, you know? So we're going to make sure, Nick Thompson promised he would make sure that some way, somehow you get your plaques. And maybe you can do a selfie with Nick when he delivers the plaque. So you'll be getting that. So thanks for your years of service. On to Mike Barnes again, MnDOT. Mike, you got a few things I think you want to report out on.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and also thanks to the outgoing members. Really appreciate the service. We got just a couple items here that to highlight. Just got to get to it here. The first, and we'll send this out to Elaine so she can have. There's a number of these things that are going to have some links, but I just wanted to highlight it so then when you see it, you'll be probably interested in going to see it. The first one is I mentioned that our Office of Finance has done the November 2020 fund forecast, and then they also do their financial snapshot. So again, we'll send the link, but overall, things are looking a little better. You know, so our funds, even though they were down from some of the reduced traffic because of COVID, in the near term, we're seeing that it's not going to be as quite as bad as originally forecast. We had the February forecast, which had things looking much better. Then there was kind of the end of the session forecast that really started to look a lot more bleak, and then now we have this November forecast that shows some revenues are picking up. Still not back to where it was normal, but at least it's starting to look better. And then further out, it looks like things are going to be slightly reduced, but again, not near the impacts. And hopefully now with the new administration at the federal level, there will be some additional funding too. So that's the first. The next one, we had our freight, the solicitation, the freight program awards. There will be a link to the website. There were four projects selected from the Metro District and or the Metro area, and you'll be able to look at that. But just a couple that stand out is the Bloomington put in for the 494 35W interchange. They got 11 million. Anoka County got the US 10 169 Ramsey Gateway for 10 million, and then up near Woodbury, the I-94 eastbound lane improvement project got 8 million. And so then also there was some funding for a district. Again, Inver Grove Heights got 117th Street reconstruction modernization, so that was 8 million there. So that's good. There was some projects there. Another item was just a heads up that the statewide multimodal transportation plan, again, is just at the starting stages of being updated. This happens, it's on a 5-year cycle. It starts to set what would be the objectives and some performance measures, strategies, and so on. So there would be some links for ways that not only yourselves but others that you want to get involved. There's already like a first date coming up about some comments on the public participation plan, but most of it from there is if you wanted to share some transportation stories, there's some links and fill in, and there's a place to be able to help vote and pick 6 focus areas. One I did want to mention is there's an ability to request a presentation about the plan. I know our central office staff went to the TAC planning group back in November. They gave kind of informational presentation. They haven't been to either the TAC or even the TAB here, but if there is interest, we can have a presentation here as part of that process. So, and then lastly here, there is the draft statewide pedestrian system plan that is out for review, and there's a link there that if you wanted to review and give any comments by January 11th, that would be great. So again, we'll send that to Elaine, but wanted to give you some heads up of some opportunities to give some input. And so with that, Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
All right, good. Thank you. All right, let's move on then. Any questions for Mike Barnes? Member Barnes? All right. On to Todd Bewan. I saw Todd on the screen. Todd, nice to have you with us as always. And MPCA, anything to report?
Just a couple quick things. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're preparing a couple reports that might be of interest. They're required by the legislature for us to prepare every 2 years. And so we direct them to the legislature, but we also put them on our website. One of them is the Greenhouse Gas Emissions Inventory Report, which updates greenhouse gas data for all of Minnesota for the most recent year. This does include a section on how transportation impacts greenhouse gas emissions. And then the second report is about air quality in Minnesota more generally, and how what is happening with air quality, what are the trends, and so on. So those reports will be required in January, so they will start showing up on our website about the first of the year. And then one other thing is that we're preparing to publish the Clean Cars Minnesota rule. When I say publish, I mean make it available for viewing. Now this will be the rule language, and then this will kick off a comment period, a public comment period, and there will be a series of information sessions and hearing dates over the next few months. But we do anticipate to publish this and announce that here in the next couple weeks. So kind of a milestone. We've been working on that for about a year, and now we're prepared to propose that language.
Could you give us
today?
All right. Could you give us a quick explanation of that Clean Cars Minnesota again?
Yeah, I mean, this is it's actually adopting language that is already being used by other states. I think it's around 15 other states have, and what it does is it really it does bring more cars into Minnesota, more electric cars, and we call those clean cars, either zero emission vehicles or ultra low emission vehicles. And it requires dealerships to provide more options for clean cars. It does not require any one individual or any fleet or any company to purchase them, but it does make them more available, and it requires, so it'll make choices more plentiful in terms of what people can buy.
All right, good. Thank you. Member Narayanan has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was curious about the greenhouse gas inventory data and specifically the role of transportation in climate change inducing emissions. I've seen, elsewhere that transportation today is the largest source of carbon emissions. Is that the case in Minnesota as well?
It is, just by a nose. It has been over the past decades. It's been power production, of course, but that has gone down over years due to the sort of the turning away from coal to more alternate sources of power production. So now transportation does lead by a little bit in Minnesota. Yes, it's our largest source, and that's one of the reasons that we are focusing. We're turning up more focus onto the transportation sector.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I just have one more comment on that. I just want to point out the work of the Minnesota Department of Transportation has put together a council called the Sustainable Transportation Advisory Council that is working to reduce carbon emissions from the transportation sector. And I serve on that council, and we've just released a slate of recommendations that are pretty ambitious. We think that it's really important that the state take action to reduce carbon emissions from transportation, specifically from driving. And I'd encourage folks, if they're interested, to go and check out the website. There's some really good material in there. I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you for your work on the GHG inventory too, Todd.
Yeah, Member Narayanan, that's terrific news to hear about the formation of that advisory council, and then that you're on it as well. So maybe you could put into the chat the link to that organization. I think that's good. And then we might want to think about, or you let Elaine know when from time to time you think it's important to give a report out to the tab on some of the work that you're doing. I think it would be important to hear about.
I'd be very happy to give a report. This work will continue all through 2021 as well. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I will do that.
Yeah, thank you, Member Narayanan. All right. And then anything else for B1?
So I would just offer, Mr. Chair, that we're always happy to share any more detail with the tab on any of our reports or on the rule on the greenhouse, or on the clean cars rule that I talked about. If in 2021 this body would like to hear any more detail, we could sure do that.
I would think both the greenhouse gas data, the GHG data, and the Clean Cars Minnesota program would be good to have the links to that information as well.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Member Hollinshead.
I'd like to ask whether anything in that Clean Cars plan concerns electric vehicles that are actually powered by hydrogen cells instead of recharging. Do you happen to know?
Mr. Chair, Member Hollinshead, I do not know that detail. I can go back and ask about that and directly contact you about that, but I don't know right offhand.
I think California is the only state that's actually performing on hydrogen cell electric vehicles so far. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch that technology come forward too. I think Member Hollinshead, you're making a nice observation there. Anything else environmental related, MPCA related? All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And then on to Carl Crimmins, Member Crimmins at the MAC.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Things are slowly improving. As of the end of November, passengers through TSA were down a little over 60%. So we had about 80,000 passengers pass through TSA at the end of November. Last year at this time, we had about 250,000. passing through TSA on a weekly basis. So you can see it's still improving. It's a lot better than it was back in March, but it has a long way to go. Parking is picking up. Excuse me. Parking's picking up slowly. As you see, aircraft operations daily, it's about 50% in 2020 in November than it was in November of 2019. So operations are up to 50%. And we're slowly getting back. Vehicle parking, like I say, parking's up a little bit in November. It was higher in October, but for some reason it dropped a little bit in November. But that average daily departures in December are going to be about 318 in 2020 compared to 483 in December of 19. So that's a 34% reduction. So other than that, we still have the COVID testing area open in the parking lot at MSP. It's getting quite a bit of use. So it's free parking if you come in and out within a certain amount of time. You don't have to pay to park. You can pull in, you can park, you can take your test and get your results emailed to you, but then you can get back in your car and leave. So that aspect is quite popular right now. So other than that, construction is moving along really well. Naturally, there's not a lot of passengers getting away. And our cleaning programs at MSP are being recognized by the airport councils of North America. So staff has done a good job putting cleaning programs into effect. So everybody should feel, again, we want everybody to feel confident, travel confidently. That's the new slogan. And that's what you should see if you go on the website, travel confidently. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, unless there's questions.
All right. Thank you, Member Cremens. Any questions regarding the MAC? You, of course, are going to have in a few minutes your capital improvement program coming up for potential approval. So we'll look forward to that as well. It's nice to know that you're continuing to reinvest in the airport facility. Other questions, comments regarding the Commissioner Karwowski?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was curious with the vaccines, the precautions, the special flights for those. Just briefly, if there's special care on a flight landing with vaccinations, are these going to be full loads? Are they going to get picked up, kind of bypass the normal protocol for cargo? Just curious if there's any unique airport considerations for the vaccines.
That's something I don't have the information on. That would be staff and actually working that out with security. I know there's high security over that. I see Bridget's on the call. I don't know if Bridget wants to add anything to it.
Ms. Race?
Hello, everyone. Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for the question. It does fall to our airside operations and our security folks, so we'll have to get an answer back to you on that one.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bridget. Anything else? Yeah, Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Carl, for the report. So you said that it's being used, the COVID testing site. It's not a drive-in, right? You have to get out of your car and go into the airport. And is there a long line? I'm just curious about how long the line might be for it, or maybe there's no line. People have been asking me if they think there's a line there.
Well, it would naturally depend on the time of day.
Right.
But I believe if they go on the MSP website, they have some information on the website as far as how long your average wait time would be.
Oh, okay. That's a great suggestion. I'll send them there. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Member Dugan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the COVID testing, unfortunately, I'm going in for one this afternoon, and we did check out the Blue Ramp, and it's on the Minnesota Department of Health website. and they close at 4:30, and they will list whether there's a wait, etc. I am going to Inver Grove Heights Armory, which is the newer one, and you can get in there in the same day almost. I probably don't have it, but would just being extra cautious. Secondly, as the tab liaison to the Transportation Committee, their most popular report is the MAC report. So I do a little bit of research, and I want to commend MAC and, of course, Member Crimmins. When he talks about the awards, the best in North America for the fourth year in a row is from the Airports Council. It's called the Airports Council International, ACI, and it's in the $25 to $40 million category, 25 million passenger category. And the other award that Mr. Crimmins talked about last month was the ACI's Director General's Excellence in Airport Service Quality, which is a top award that's given, and I believe there were only 7 airports recognized internationally. So I just want to add that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good. Thank you, Member DeGan. All right. Anything else for Member Crimmins? Then we have Met Council Member Deb Barber, our Member Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not too much to report this month, but we've been busy, obviously, working on our budget, and we did pass our annual budget last week. I think one thing that I just want to point out to everyone was, even though we are feeling financial strains ourselves, we were able to maintain our budget with a 0% increase in the levy over the amount in 2020, which I'm really proud of. It took a lot of work with our staff and making sure that they, left no rock or stone unturned to make sure we could be as fiscally responsible as possible. So I was really happy with that. The other thing I wanted to mention is we're getting a presentation this evening on the ABRT lines. There will be an ask at the end of that of a request out to for all of you to reach out to your communities and your networks, because there's an online survey that's part of our public outreach and comment period. And so I just want to just request that all of you use your networks and get that information out so we can get as much feedback on what we're looking at as we take the next step towards actually prioritizing the ABRT lines. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Member Barber. Any questions for Member Barber? Met Council related from anyone? I wanted to double back just quickly on that Blue Ribbon Committee. They asked me to serve on it because I was the chair of the tab, so they could get current information. But I also wanted to recognize Mary Jo McGuire. Commissioner McGuire is on that Blue Ribbon Task Force as well, and so is George Schember. I saw George's. Yeah, he's not on the screen here. His name's up on the screen, but George, in addition to being part of the Blue Ribbon group, also just retired from Cargill recently, and so congratulations on that, George, and to give you a little shout out on that. And
thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you. And Mr. Chair, it was an honor to serve on that Blue Ribbon Committee. I'm just going to echo your thanks to Commissioner Holberg for her leadership on that committee, and also to you, Mr. Chair, who really helped with some of the writing on that final document. And I just want to thank you for taking the lead on that as well. We were all funneling comments and suggestions to you, and so to both you and Commissioner Holberg, thank you for your work.
That was a good Thanksgiving weekend project.
Wow.
The era of COVID, that's the kind of stuff you come up with. That's the kind of stuff you come up with for fun on a Thanksgiving weekend.
Wow.
All right. And then TAC report, Chair Freeze, did you have anything you wanted to report out on, or do you want to go to the business item?
We can defer to the business items. The only thing I was going to say is that John Solberg would be the new chair.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's go to the business items. There's 2 items on the consent agenda, and if you've looked at both the consent and non-consent agenda, you've noticed that there's 2 streamlined matters there back to back. One's in the consent agenda portion of the agenda, and one's in the non-consent portion of the agenda. Just a quick heads up on that, and Chair Freeze can talk about this, but the first one, 2020-40, is in the consent agenda because it went through the TAC agenda. you recall that we can put it on the consent agenda if it goes through TAC first. The non-consent one, 2020-41, didn't have a chance to get through the vetting of the TAC. So that's why it's coming to us as a non-consent agenda item. So is there anyone on the tab that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda as shown.
Mr. Chair, I will make that motion to approve, and it's Mayor Mary.
Thank you, Mayor Mary.
I will
I'll second
second.
that.
Commissioner
That was
Gutierrez seconds. All right. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Ms. Ernst, with respect to the consent agenda, approval of the consent agenda.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Boyles,
Aye. Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Gottel,
Aye.
Hammond Roland,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Karwoski,
Aye.
Lindicke,
Aye.
Look,
Aye.
Maluchnik, Ewan,
Aye from B1.
Thank you. McGuire,
Aye.
Naryanan,
Aye.
Petrick,
Aye.
Reich,
Aye.
Sanger,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson,
Aye.
Swanson, Jepson, Holbert, Ulrich,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
Washi.
Aye.
Thank you. The ayes have it. The consent agenda items are approved.
Chair, this is Chris Tolbert. I thought she said Holberg again when she said Tolbert, so sorry about that. I didn't
No
jump
worries.
in, but I'm a yes too, if I could be considered.
Thank you,
Mark
member.
you down.
I think we're all probably looking at Commissioner Look's backdrop there. I'm hoping that he's actually there, sitting with his shorts and flip-flops on, just a fakey looking button-down long-sleeve shirt, but I don't know. It looks good regardless.
Mr. Chair.
Well, cheaper. Maybe not as satisfying, but let's move on to the action items, the non-consent items. The first one there is 2020-41, and that's the streamlined amendment I mentioned earlier, and that did not go through the TAC agenda, so we need to deal with it here. And this deals with a project up in the Elk River area. Came to TAC late, as I mentioned, and Sheriff Freeze will handle this matter for us.
Okay, real quickly, I'll just recap. This is in Elk River. It's part of the extended urbanized area that's under the MPO planning area, which includes small portions of Wright and Sherburne counties. This project needs an amendment because the project termini of the project has been extended from 0.8 miles to 1.28 miles. And as well, there's been a total project increase. The project increase has gone from 9.6 million to 12.2 million. The project is being fully funded by the National Highway Performance Program, which is a program that's funded through MnDOT. It does not come through the regional process. It's required to be approved and included in the TIP because it includes federal funds. The district has met the requirements for fiscal constraint. And I think the thing about this that I'll just say is that we decided to to make an exception and allow this to go through our old streamlining process, which the TAC exec recommends that it's a streamlined project, in part because this is the first amendment that District 3 has had to process in this manner. And if we would have waited until the next month, there was the project would have missed its planned letting schedule. So in respect of trying to keep projects on schedule, especially projects of this magnitude, we're moving it forward to you with a recommendation for streamlining and approval.
Good. Do any TAB members have questions for Chair Freeze with respect to 2020-41? Is there a motion to approve 2020-41?
So made.
Who is that?
Mayor
Washey, and seconded by Mayor Bailey.
You got it.
All right, thank you. All right, we've got a motion by Member Washey, second by Mayor Bailey, with respect to adoption of Resolution 2020-41 as recommended. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Ms. Ernst.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Boyles,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Cotel,
Aye.
Heyman Roland,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead, Hollinshead, Karwoski,
Aye.
Lindeke,
Aye.
Look,
Aye.
Muluchnik,
Aye.
Bewan,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Narayanan,
Aye.
Petrick,
Aye.
Reich,
Aye.
Sanger,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson,
Aye.
Jepson, Tolbert,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
Washi.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. 2020-41 is approved. Next matter, Chair Freeze, is 2020-37, which is the
On behalf
Metropolitan.
of District 3,
Pardon me?
on behalf of District 3, if I'd like to say something real quick on behalf of Metro or MnDOT District 3, thank you.
Yes. Go ahead, Mr.
I cut out a little bit there, so hopefully you got everything you needed on that, and thank you for getting that approved for us.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for being with us today. This will be a good project. All right, on to 2020-37, which is the Metropolitan Airport Commission Capital Improvement Program. They're required by state law to go to the Met Council once a year for review of their capital improvement plan, their 7-year plan, and then it comes to us for review as well and recommendation on to approve or not to approve that capital improvement plan. And Chair Freeze, go ahead.
The Met Council has some certain tests under state law they're required to meet. They're supposed to look at the adequacy of the public participation process that MAC has around the capital improvement process. They also are to look at CIP projects that meet certain dollar thresholds, $5 million at MSP and then $2 million at the reliever airports, and whether they meet the significant effects criteria. And then they review and comment on all projects for consistency within the transportation policy plan. As Chair Hovland mentioned, this process does not require TAB review, but it's a tradition that has come through the TAB for comments. The TAC Planning Committee reviewed this at their meeting in December, and then, or I think in November actually, and then it came to TAC Planning in December with recommendations of approval. I think the key thing to focus in on is that there's 2021 projects that meet the dollar thresholds at MSP, but they do not meet the significant effects criteria to trigger project approval. And as normal, this process is kind of interwoven with MAC's review in December. And so this recommendation is coming to you prior to that. Any comments or changes that will occur at the MAC meeting in December will be brought before the MEC Council when they actually take formal action on this. And I believe that Mr. Owens, who helps with this process from the MEC Council, and Ms. Reef are both in the audience if there's detailed technical questions.
Thank you, Chair Freeze. Mr. Owens or Ms. Reef, any comment, or Member Crimmins?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Crimmins. I would comment that the staff has worked hard on this, and it's been brought before the full commission and our committees since September, maybe even August. So this thing has been really studied and vetted, and I think staff has done a wonderful job in getting it to where, in this trying time, it can be affordable and workable. And after that, excuse me, any particulars I would leave to Bridget. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for staff, whether it be Mr. Owens or Ms. Reef or Member Crimmins? One more cough from Member Crimmins that we're going to make him put a mask on. All right, is there a motion to approve action transmittal 2020-37, which would provide for the tab recommending the approval of the MAC 2021 through 2027 capital improvement program?
So moved, Windshuttle.
Second by Heyman Roland.
All right, thank you. Mayor Windshuttle moves, Mayor Heyman Roland seconds. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Ms. Ernst?
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Boyles,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Jelani Stevens,
Aye.
Gattell,
Aye.
Heyman Roland,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Karwoski,
Aye.
Lindeke,
Aye.
Lindeke,
Aye. Yes.
Look,
Aye.
Malichnik,
Aye.
Ewan,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Naryanan,
Aye.
Naryanan,
Aye.
Dietrich,
Aye.
Reich,
Aye.
Sanger,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson, Jepson, Tolbert,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Yes.
Washi.
Aye.
The motion passes. The 2020-37 is approved. And next we're on to 2020-39, which is the regional solicitation matter we've been working on for the past several months. And we got to our last meeting in November and asked staff to focus in on scenario 1B. And so we didn't vote on approving 1B at the last meeting in November, and so we need to take that up as a matter of course today and approve or not approve 2020-39, which does embrace what the TAB intended or told staff we intended to do in November. And then Chair Freeze will report out on what the TAC, how they voted, and then a couple other things as well she's got to address with us. So Chair Freeze.
Okay. This item here, as you will recall, is kind of the culmination, I think, of 2 years of your work, getting ready for the solicitation and then actually launching the solicitation. So it's a big effort, both in terms of the technical committees and TAB as well. So it's exciting to be at this point. Scenario 1B, just to kind of recap for everybody, funds. It's the historical process with some variations on a theme. It funds 56 projects, 22 million of regional solicitation dollars are awarded on those 56 projects, with $243 million worth of match money by the local agencies for a total transportation investment of over $465 million. It involves 28 unique applicants, and this year it also involved funding bonus points for some of the equity projects, and 9 out of 10 funded equity projects are in this scenario. So I think some of the work that you've done is showing in this scenario. This went back through the TAC Funding and Programming Committee and TAC for some discussion. And with your recommendation to fund 1B, the discussion primarily centered around how in the future perhaps we should be looking at the geographic distribution. That was what funding and programming primarily focused on, with some ideas about how to define it, what projects perhaps even Hsip should be included in that analysis, and said that we should do some further work on that as a part of our update and working together with TAB for the next regional solicitation in 2022. And then the other element that did come up primarily in the TAB or the TAC discussion at their December meeting was a recommendation that when we start to review the policies, in particular the allocation policy, which is a policy that's used to triage how we handle funding if projects drop out, or if there's extra funding come to the region that can be applied to federally funded projects. And one of the thoughts that was recommended by a number of committee members was that there should maybe be some consideration given to those 2 partially funded projects in 1A to have them have some consideration for getting fully funded before additional money is applied to other projects if there is funding available. So both TAC Funding and Programming at their November meeting and TAC at their December 2nd meeting voted to recommend approval of 1B and thank the TAB and all of the committee members who worked on scoring of TAC for all their hard work. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
And good report out, Chair Freeze. Questions for Chair Freeze on proposed action transmittal 2020-39?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Member Narayanan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Freeze, could you expand a little bit more on the comments around whether Hsip projects should be included in the overall consideration? Because we spent a lot of time in the last 2 meetings talking about whether all counties should receive a project. And since we're really operating in a regional basis, it does appear that at least in Hsip, Scott County still gets a project. And I wonder if that really changed anything in terms of your determination.
Well, I think that's one of the ongoing discussions. I don't know that it changes their recommendation for today. I don't think it was unanimous that Hsip should be considered, because that's as you'll hear in the next item, that is a MnDOT focused program focused on safety and and different in nature, but I think it's worthy of discussion in the future as to how that gets considered as a part of the larger geographic balance discussion.
Any follow-on, Member Narayanan? Okay, Member Lindeke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is about the policy of having each county get a project being something that I guess by de facto we do. Could a county just submit only one or two normally low-scoring projects, and with the knowledge that they would get one of them, and sort of rig the system that way? I'm just wondering if that's something we should try to think about.
Okay, who's got the beach music going?
Super luck if he's on the beach, so I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, is there some immediate suspicion about that? To your question, Member Lindeke, I think you raise a good point, and this is something we talked about at the exec committee meeting, and this is something that the TAC, frankly, would like some guidance on as well, is that how do we approach the concept of geographic balance? You know, so I think the question you raise is one that we can feather in, if you will, to the conversation that we're going to have over the next couple of months. So we determine maybe in advance how we want to deal with that issue of geographic balance. That, along with that federal funds reallocation policy, that needs some attention on our part too. So this regional solicitation is a ongoing refinement effort to try to make it a better and better product. And you've certainly raised one of the issues that we need to address as we can continue that refinement, along with addressing issues around equity.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
This is John Ulrich, Scott County. I think it's worthy to have that in place for the future, that a county didn't game the system in the way that's being suggested. I will say it's never happened in the last 20 years where a county's gamed the system in that way. Where in this particular case, Scott County was 1 point out of the money, if you want to say it that way, but the 1 point below project in Carver County. So it's not clearly in play in this solicitation, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't be good to have something in place for that in the future.
You know, this conversation is causing me to think back to a time when I was first on the tab. Everything was done just on objective scoring. And the tab itself really had no judgmental or role in making these decisions that we now make and have made over the past few solicitations, and exercising the experience and the wisdom that belongs to this group as a whole. I like this process, and we can continue to refine it. But I would just caution that going to a straight objective determination on everything doesn't always work out the best either. And we're here for a reason to exercise our judgment. Otherwise, a lot of us wouldn't even want to be participating, because we would just be automatons, rubber stamping whatever the work is that the technical people do. And I think we want to be here for more than that. And so just keep that in the back of your minds too, that that's an important consideration. So, Member Lindeke, any follow on from that question? I mean, it was a good and merits part of our conversation over the next few months as we continue this refinement work. So, anyone else have follow? Commissioner Gattel?
I would just like to move the item.
No.
All right.
I have a question. We'll second it, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gattel moves, Mayor Mary seconds, approval of action transmittal 2020-39.
Mayor?
Yes.
I do have a question.
Member Sanger, yeah, we can go to discussion now.
Oh.
We got a motion in a second, so we'll go to discussion. That was my next inquiry. So, Member Sanger?
Okay, my question addresses the award for the new market transit project. And my question isn't about this specific project so much as in general. As I look at the map about what would qualify as a new market project, it's obvious that a lot of the routes, I mean, they go through congested, more core inner city areas before they get to the further out communities. My experience in some other communities is that when they build those kind of lines, then at some point the operators say, you know, we don't have a lot of riders out there in the far fringe area. So then they only go like one trip in the morning and one trip in the afternoon, and they don't go on weekends. So my question, or my hope really, is that when we award contracts under the new market program, we also require that they provide service on a regular basis all day long, 7 days a week, and not and so that it really does serve the new market area in a consistent manner.
All right, thank you for that input. Let's put that issue out there for our future discussion as well. I don't know if Mayor Washi has any thoughts on that or a variation of what Member Sanger was talking about.
Mr. Chair, I would just add that, that was part of very intricate negotiations between arterial bus and dedicating money for that, how much would be capped on BRTs overall, and making sure that there was new money for especially some of the suburban routes, that as the population keeps expanding, we can bring access to them as well. So there's my point is there's a balance here that we are trying to maintain in terms of balancing all those needs.
All right. Well, let's put that question from Member Sanger into the issues pool for further discussion here over the next few months. Anyone else have a thought relative to 1B? Commissioner Karwoski?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. This was my first full, 2 years to go through the whole process. I joined TAB several months before the prior solicitation to this one. So it's been a great learning experience. And then before we vote, I just want to thank, it's been great working with all the TAB members and then all the work staff does to take this convoluted direction and put it into a solicitation that we decide on that. It's never going to be perfect, but I really did like the discussion, the comments we've had on equity and regional balance, and we'll have time to work on that and make a better product the next time. I think we made a lot of good strides on regional balance, and I hope we can continue that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Karwoski. Commissioner McGuire?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to echo Commissioner Karwoski's. The process just keeps getting better and better, I think. From my time on TAB, I think our discussions have just been richer and more inclusive. And so I just support that, and I support continued conversations on equity. And as TAC has recommended on, what geographic balance looks like and means. So I'm just grateful to you, Mr. Chair, and to the board. And this has been a great board that has really, I think, tried to look at all the different aspects of what we really want to do here and try to do the best thing. So thank you.
I agree, Commissioner. A really engaged TAB membership, really terrific, first rate. Member Dugan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is my third or fourth regional solicitation, so I'm understanding it a little bit. And I would suggest for newly appointed Transportation Secretary, Mayor Buttigieg, that if he can understand the regional solicitation, he's got my vote. But I feel compelled to say that I thoroughly support the TAB exercising judgment, even if it means, shall we say, each county gets a project. It's just an example, and Member Lindicke's comments are apropos. But there's two things that I've learned from being in these regional solicitations, and I have to give credit to Commissioner Callison when she stepped the Hennepin County project away. I think it was the last solicitation to make room for someone else, but primarily to Commissioner Maluchnik. And so what Randy said is the best thing that I've heard, is that regional government works together. Regional government works better when we all work together, and that comity and collaboration that we have here is marvelous to witness, and I fully support that type of process going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Member Dugan. And Member Reich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think in the spirit of continual refinement on how we view our solicitation, the frameworks that we utilize, I'm very heartened that we're going to continue deepening the meaning of equity in that work and actually being very results oriented in how we talk about it. I like that progression in that area. And I do very much consider the geographic balance question. Maybe something for staff to consider and for us to also mull is maybe a couple other overlays in addition to the sort of physical geographic spread as identified by political subdivisions, maybe the actual system infrastructure itself as an overlay map. There's a population to the space, but there's also a population in use that might be something that would inform our considerations moving forward. It certainly would speak to cost benefit being measured by use, and it also would speak to, simply put, wear and tear as well in part of our considerations. Not as not to supplement anything more important than that consideration, but just a new overlay as an analytical framework as we're trying to refine our approach.
Yeah, that is a very important observation, Member Reich. Thank you for it, and I think we should add that to the mix for conversation when we start those preliminary discussions on the next solicitation. And Member Malushnik, Commissioner Malushnik is totally engaged. He's got the thumbs up going, even though this is his last meeting. So I like that engagement to the end. Thank you for that. Member Geisler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to, emphasize we made a lot of good improvements, and I like that the things that we changed this cycle, we're not discussing every one of them as something that was broken or hard to deal with, which means we made some good moves and good improvements, which is great. And I really want to thank the staff and the TAC for bubbling down or distilling these things down to conversation points that we can have and work on, and looking at things that are, what should we make a rule, what is a guiding principle where we do our best to achieve it, but we don't, it's not hard and fast. I'm really looking forward to those conversations, and I think, just to echo everyone else, we managed to get to something where everybody's mostly happy. And I think that's a great way to deal with it, considering how many people are at this table right now. So just thanks to everybody who helped do that.
All right. Thank you, Member Geisler. All right. We've got a motion and a second on the table with regard to 2020-39. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, with respect to approval of 2020-39. Ms. Ernst.
Anderson.
Aye.
Bailey.
Aye.
Barber.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
Boyles.
Aye.
Crimmins.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Foster. Foster.
She had to leave.
Oh, okay. Fox.
Aye.
Geisler.
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens.
Aye.
Gotel.
Aye.
Heyman Roland.
Aye.
Hanson.
Aye.
Holberg.
No.
Hollenshead.
Aye.
Karwoski.
Aye.
Lindicke.
Aye.
Look.
Aye.
Maluchnik.
A resounding aye.
Dewin.
Aye.
McGuire.
Aye, and we're going to miss Randy's resounding ayes. Aye.
Naryanin.
Aye.
Petrick.
Aye.
Reich.
Aye.
Sanger.
Aye.
Schember.
Aye.
Stephenson.
Aye.
Jepson. Tolbert.
Yes. Member
Ulrich.
Aye.
Yes. Tolbert's a yes.
Thank you. Wind Shuttle,
Yes.
Washi.
Aye.
Motion carries. 2020-39 is approved. That was some enormous work, a big lift. Congratulations to all of you for a job extraordinarily well done, and staff as well. Yeah, trying to sort through all that color coding is really something to behold. So here, let's give the staff a round of applause for the work that they did to help guide us along the way. And to yourselves as well for a job superbly done. So thank you very, very much for getting us through this solicitation period. And some significant dollars. The money coming down federally, over $200 million for the period involved, 2022 through 2025. And then that matching money, really significant as well. Really great, great work on everybody's part. And then let's move on to Hsip, which Member Narayanan had some inquiries about, and you might explain, Chair Freeze, why we've kind of historically dealt with that separately. I think you touched on that, the fact that it was MnDOT money that has to go through the regional, or through, it has to be embedded in the TIP. So go ahead, let's talk about that and the recommended over programming amount there, so we can have a little conversation around that. I think a few of our members have a question about the percentage of over programming that we ought to be thinking about there. So, Chair Freeze.
Thank you. The Highway Safety Improvement Program, which we all refer to as Hsip, is one of the core federal programs, and that's part of the FAST Act. It's actually been in place for quite a number of reauthorizations. The Hsip program itself is designed to achieve reduction in traffic fatalities and serious injury crashes on all public roads, including non-state roads, public roads, and on tribal land. This process itself requires a data-driven approach, a strategic approach that looks at crash reduction on projects both proactively and reactively, and they need to be consistent with the statewide strategic highway safety plan. So MnDOT shares these funds with local governments, and this Hsip solicitation is usually coordinated at the same time as regional solicitation. It is for federal funding years 2024 and 2025. So MnDOT actually brings its guidance through the Met Council for approval and public comment before it goes out for this solicitation. Local governments then submit applications as well as MnDOT to be considered through this criteria that a core MnDOT team and some of the local partners are involved in helping with the scoring on. Scoring and rankings are shown here in your attachment for all of the projects, both proactive and reactive. There's approximately 31.6 million that is programmed for this purpose by MnDOT for the metro area and the Chisago County extension, which is part of the metro district's coverage area. So what's coming before you is a recommendation for funding 26 projects, and 13 of them are proactive and 14 of them are reactive projects on the list. And what's your action today will be is including all of the urbanized area projects in the draft 2022 through 2025 TIP. Chair Hovland mentioned that when this recommendation came to funding and programming, it did not include overprogramming. Funding and programming forwarded their recommendation without overprogramming to TAC. At the TAC meeting, we discussed the potential of having an additional project overprogram or to overprogram these funds. The MnDOT program manager was a little reluctant to have over programming because they don't know whether or not they will have additional funds. Typically, they don't. And very seldom do projects in the HSIP category actually drop out. So they don't have the opportunity to fund additional projects through potentially projects dropping out of the funded category. With that discussion, however, though, I think we determined in consultation with MnDOT, John Solberg, who's the programming manager there, that we could consider over programming potentially another project. There was a discussion about the various projects that were next in line on the list, and the recommendation coming out of TAC was to go ahead and include R26, which is a project in Woodbury, into the over programming for this recommendation that you have before you. And so with that, both TAC funding and programming, and TAC recommend approval of this, and included in the draft 2022 through 2025 TIP, the projects as listed in your memo.
And then just for clarification, Chair Freeze, with the addition of that R26 project in Woodbury, that would be captured, if you will, by the 5% over programming amount. Is that correct?
That is correct. So with that project, it amounts to about 5% over programming.
Okay, good. Questions for Chair Freeze or comments? I think Commissioner Karwoski had a comment. I remember from Executive Committee, Commissioner Gattell wanted to comment as well. Karwoski, go ahead.
This would have been funded under a different scenario, so it rates very high. If it would be appropriate, just for perhaps I would end my comments is to make a motion and just get it before us before we get additional comments. Would that be okay, Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
I'll make a motion to move 2020-38.
I'll second.
As presented.
Commissioner Gattell seconds, and that's the recommended motion, which includes the 5% over programming. Is that correct, Commissioner Karwoski?
Yes.
All right, and Commissioner Gattell, same?
Yes.
Okay, all right. We got a motion and a second with regard to 2020-38, which the motion was the recommended motion language you see on the first page of the action transmittal. And then Commissioner Karwoski, do you want to make your comments now?
No, I
just want to make the motion. All right, and then let's go to Commissioner Gattell. I know she's got something she wants the tab to consider in terms of the level of over programming.
Yeah, I know. And you know, this may not be appropriate at this time, and we had some conversation in the executive about this. So I appreciate all my colleagues chiming in there and when we look at these decisions, we really would have liked to have seen at least staff and the conversations I've had at Hennepin County 10% over programming for the regional solicitation. We would have, since one reactive project was added when our proactive Hennepin Lake Street project was removed, so we've had one removed. The next proactive project to consider for the 5%, we would hope was Hennepin County, but I don't want to take away from Stan, and I think I said that for Woodbury's. But if there is anything that would come up in the future and everything like that, that Hennepin County project really needs to be done too, and it was a very high score as well. You know, these are always tight and tough questions, but when one is pulled, you know, it would be interesting to know. We don't have any policy around that, so that's another one of those things to put in the bucket for further conversation down the road.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. John Solberg, are you with us still?
Yes, I'm here.
John, would you comment? I mean, I think what Commissioner Gattell is getting at is if we overprogrammed at 10%, not 5%, at least this is my understanding, we capture that P6 project, I think it is, in Hennepin County. And so the question is, should we think about overprogramming in the HSIP category like we think about overprogramming on the general regional solicitation or are you recommending, because you run this program based on past experience, that we should stay with 5% over programming at not at present because most of these projects get done?
Yeah, Chair, I guess short answer to that is that the Hsip program has been very successful in maintaining those projects throughout the project development process. And so past history tells us that very, very few of those slide in program years as compared to many of the other projects that are selected through the region. That in itself kind of lays out that the projects that we select will use that amount of money. There's not really as much of a need to program those other projects because projects slip out. But in addition to that, we did have a very good discussion with our central office programming to understand what was their comfort in programming additional dollars or programming additional projects for those dollars. The concern was really at the statewide level that because we still have this pandemic affecting the income for the state and for MnDOT, that while we seem to be a little bit closer here in 21, 22 through 24 start to look like more of a risk potentially as the economy is not growing back as fast and our costs will continue to grow. And so that's why we were not as supportive of that higher 10% that the region normally sees, but more at the 5%, which would give us a nominal amount that we're pretty sure that we could program. And if no projects fell out, what it really means is we'd take from another program within the department and cover the cost of that project.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may just follow up, I understand that, and we all understand the economic issues that we're facing. I think the other piece is the policy question over if a county removes a project to help out, does that put them in a different place in the future? And that's a policy question to be taken up at some time.
Good. I'm glad you're comfortable taking this up after the first of the year when we started on the work solicitation. Thank you. All right, so we've got a recommended motion. Is there any further inquiry or comment regarding the proposed motion around the Hsip program? All right.
Mr. Chair, this is Geisler.
Yes, Member Geisler.
Thank you. The question I have, it kind of a dovetail off of Member Gattel's question there is the allocation between proactive and reactive intentionally 50-50 as either a project count or a dollar count? And is that a strategic worthwhile question to say, is that 50-50 allocation appropriate?
Chair Freeze.
The allocation has been that way, actually statewide. As I understand it, MnDOT has focused more on reactive projects, but in the metro area, because there's been a backlog of proactive projects, meaning projects that fix existing conditions, they have maintained that 50-50 split. But in all reality, MnDOT is moving towards this program towards trying to do more proactive types of projects in order to prevent crashes rather than to go back and fix situations where there's been an existing condition that needs to be remedied.
Okay, and if I may follow up behind that.
Go ahead.
I guess the thing that I would put out for food for thought is that if we're doing over programming, I would feel it feels odd to over program in reactive where we kind of know it needs to happen versus proactive where there's data that supports doing it, but it's not reacting to existing conditions, knowing that if we don't get the funds, those projects have to wait. So just food for thought to say, does it make more sense to over program into the proactive side versus the reactive side? Projects, where they are, this list or not, but just as we're having that consideration. And I do think the member, the conversation about why these projects slide, and that is very different than the regional solicitation as far as how much we overprogram, being that, as they said, these are more stable. There's not necessarily a bigger pool of money coming back, all that. So I do think a small amount of overprogramming makes sense for what it's worth.
All right, Member Geisler, thanks. We'll add that question to the growing list here of things we want to address after the first of the year. Analysis of
Mr.
proactive.
Chair, I have a comment.
Yes, Member Narayanan.
I'd also like to encourage us to maybe think about the Hsip program in conjunction with the regional solicitation as well. I think it would give us a broader understanding of how projects are being deployed across our region. And that's something that maybe we could add onto your list as well. So thank you.
Yeah, we will. That's a good thought as well. We'll add that to the list. Yeah, you guys are thinking all the time. The refinement begins immediately. Okay. Anything else from members? We got a motion and a second. We've had good discussion. Roll call, please, Ms. Ernst, with respect to 2020-38.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Barnes,
Aye.
Boyles,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens, Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Cattell,
Aye.
Heyman Roland,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Karwoski,
Technical difficulty here. Aye, it's a little technical difficulty. Thank you.
no worries, we got you. Lindeke,
Yes.
Look,
Aye.
Malichnik,
Even greater resounding aye.
thank you. Bewan,
Aye.
Bewan,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Narayanan,
Aye.
Pedrick,
Aye.
Reich,
Aye.
Sanger. Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Ulrich,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
Washi.
Aye.
The motion carries. 2020-38 is approved. I'm wondering if anybody's keeping an eye on Commissioner Malushnik to see if he's dipping into the eggnog a little early here. All right. So that completes our business items. We've got all the action items taken care of. This is a good feeling at the end of the year. We've got a couple of informational items. We've got about 20 minutes to go, Elaine, and I think we've got this agenda in a position where we can get both of those things done within that allotted period of time. So let's see if we can get all this work done by 2:30 so we can let folks go on to their next Zoom meeting. All right, and now next we've got Katie Roth, who's going to bring us a BRT, arterial BRT update. We've done some evaluation on systems, and that refinement continues as we head towards the project. Ms. Roth?
Great. Good afternoon, and thank you, Chair Hovland. I have a brief presentation today on Metro Transit's progress to identify our near-term arterial BRT priorities and ultimately bring the F-line for TAB's funding consideration. I'll be walking briefly through the process we undertook to get to this point and also the results, which I suspect many of you may have seen since we published these recommendations last week. So if we go to the next slide, please, Greg. First, I'd like to ground us all in how this work has been guided. All of the evaluation and the recommendations that you'll see here today have been guided by our 4 principles, which are derived from a basis of Met Council policy and shaped by performance data and community input and engagement, with a lot of parallels to the regional solicitation process you've walked through today. The 4 principles shown here focus on advancing equity, ridership, supporting a transit-oriented lifestyle, and ensuring cost-effective investments for a long-term sustainable bus network. As we go to the next slide, please, Greg, a brief reminder of our process. The focus of the presentation today and of our current public engagement is the third step in this process, narrowing down an initial set of corridors now into 3 tiers for near-term, mid-term, and longer-term implementation. On the next slide, I'd like to just very briefly recap the first couple of steps in this process. We started by identifying these 19 corridors shown here, focusing on our high-frequency, high-ridership corridors, including previously studied corridors too, and also with an eye toward network balance. And using a set of initial criteria linked to the 4 principles mentioned earlier, as we go to the next slide, these 19 corridors were screened down to a set of 10 to advance for more community engagement, for early concept development to get a sense of costs and benefits, and for more analysis. And as we go to the next slide, please. As we reported to you last month, another key piece of our public engagement this fall has been to seek input on how we balance those 4 policy-based principles guiding this plan. When we sought input on this question in particular this fall of which of these 4 principles should be the most important as we approach the evaluation, about 2,600 people weighed in, and we heard significant support for weighting equity-related considerations in our evaluation, which is consistent with what we also heard from local stakeholders and from policy conversations. So if we go to the next slide, please. We have reflected that input in the weighting shown here for our technical evaluation at this now 3rd detailed stage in our process. For each of these 4 principles across the top, we defined a number of detailed quantitative criteria to compare the 10 corridors to one another, all listed here. We've weighted those equity-based metrics to comprise 50% of the total technical score, with ridership, a transit-oriented lifestyle, so that's the current and planned population, jobs, and transit-supported land use, and then the costs comprising the remaining score elements. So that's how we've really reflected a lot of the input we received at the last step in the process. I won't go through in detail each of these technical criteria in the interest of time, but if we go to the next slide, please, Greg. The results of that technical evaluation are shown here, with the corridors arranged from left to right in terms of highest to lowest technical score, and then the 4 stacked bars representing each of those 4 components of equity, ridership, transit orientation, and sustainable operation. So you can see that the scores range across the spectrum, and we do see certainly lots of great performers across each of these technical categories of criteria. On to the next slide, please. Beyond that technical scoring, a key question remained of whether each of these corridors was ready to advance for that near-term implementation. And as a reminder, when we say near-term, we're really thinking about entering a project into the pipeline so that it can be developed and implemented between 2025 and 2030. Or whether the ongoing planning efforts around other projects may complicate that near-term horizon for each of these corridors. So in the cases where other studies or other plans are still underway, we are not considering those corridors for near-term implementation, but still consider them good candidates for implementation between now and 2040 once those issues are resolved and coordination can go a little bit more. So there are 4 corridors that were removed from potential for that top tier because of these ongoing pieces, and they are listed here. They are the West Broadway and Cedar corridor, as well as the Lowry Avenue corridor, both of which are affected by the ongoing project development work for the Blue Line extension. The Nicollet Avenue corridor, where the City of Minneapolis' locally preferred alternative for streetcar overlaps with a large segment of the potential BRT line we've studied. And the Randolph East 7th corridor, where the development of the Riverview modern streetcar could affect how BRT could fit into the street, and so waiting there is prudent to advance this. So on the next slide, we bring all of these factors together. This graphic really shows how we filtered downward in this visual from the technical score across the top, again arranged from left to right in terms of highest to lowest score, and then with the readiness layered in, filtering down to tiers 1, 2, and 3 at the bottom. So in short, there's a lot of information contained on this slide, but our top tier of corridors includes those 4 corridors with the highest technical scores and no other plans or studies underway in the corridors. So these are the Como, Maryland corridor, the Johnson-Lyndale corridor, the Central Avenue corridor, and the Rice-Robert corridor. So others probably see this information better on a map. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Greg. We can see each of the corridors reflected here, color-coded by the tiers comprising the near-term, mid-term, and longer-term tiers. So again, we've got the 4 corridors being considered for near-term implementation here shown in green, spanning large parts of the Metro Transit service area, with the midterm implementation corridor shown in yellow and the longer term in the red. So as we go to the next slide, this information is currently what we're in the process of sharing very broadly with a range of different audiences to really get input on how to move from a tier of 4 potential near-term corridors to ultimately recommendations for the F, G, and H lines. So we'll be continuing through this week, meeting with city and county staff, talking more about the results and continuing that work of engaging about what are the other factors that are happening on the ground that could affect the readiness or could affect how we think about prioritization in terms of coordinating with other projects, continuing that work with city and county staff through January as well. And also during this time, we'll have a very active public outreach and comment period. We launched this last Wednesday and are really focusing our work on getting responses to an online survey, a brief survey to get folks input on F, G, and H line priorities, along with a lot more information up on our website. Really trying to learn based on what we've learned from previous outreach efforts this year during COVID about what works best to get people keyed into this information and how we can best get underrepresented communities of color to weigh in on a lot of these key prioritization questions. As Councilmember Barber mentioned earlier, we'll also be ready to share with you all a packet of information that you can share with your networks to get people keyed into this information as well. Again, appreciation for the efforts that TAB members put into sharing this word earlier in our process. In terms of our next steps from here, ultimately in early 2021, we'll be building on the input we receive and continued readiness discussions, more consideration of ridership and costs to identify the F, G, and H lines from that top tier of candidates, culminating in Met Council action to approve our Network Next plan outcomes in March and forwarding an action, a recommendation to TAB rather, for action on a potential F-line investment in April of 2021. And then certainly just to end this up, as we've talked a lot about arterial BRT investment in Network Next, and certainly at the last TAB discussion, there was a lot of question about how to position potential corridors for arterial BRT consideration in the future. And so just a reminder that as we conclude our work around arterial BRT and Network Next, and as we emerge from the pandemic, we intend to delve more into the broader work of looking at the local and express bus network and defining more of a vision for a 2040 transit system. And we continue to work with your communities throughout that process as well. So with that, Chair, I will stand for any questions.
Ms. Roth, we're giving you the Holiday Hero Award. You got through the most comprehensive amount of information, the most compressed amount of time we've ever seen. So you're up for a big virtual hug here. Commissioner McGuire, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to add my gratitude and admiration for that presentation. Very well done. I'm just going to ask you to comment a little bit, and I'm really grateful for the public comment period and the work that we're going to do to outreach to communities. Can you just talk a little bit about the impact the weight that public comment will have on these projects? So, we know that public comment is really important, and we know we want that. Sometimes disenfranchised communities may not be as able to public comment. I'm just concerned about how you're going to be reading that public comment. I mean, I know everyone on these corridors is going to be trying to get out their people to comment on this. So just curious if you could talk a little bit about what the weight will be on that. And as I said, I support that it does bear on these decisions as public comment. But
Chair and Member McGuire, thank you for that question. Certainly in terms of, especially now, we are cognizant of the limitations of our ability to reach folks, and also have been careful as we approach this process not to position our engagement as a referendum or as a ranked choice vote, or a direct result under the next steps of the process. So I do want to highlight that as well. I think that as important as hearing numbers of folks from across these different corridors, we're also asking folks to help us understand how we should approach this and what are the types of factors. And so while this will be an important component of hearing from certainly our riders and local community members, we also are seeking to hear more comment and more specific input from our communities and our leaders of our communities, the folks we work with in Public Works Department and transportation areas, to think about how these fit with other street reconstruction priorities or other program projects so we can best think about aligning priorities, as well as ultimately, I think, honing in more on some of the costs, both in terms of building these lines, but also in terms of how they fit into our network amidst some of the budget outlook and the times that we're thinking of in our transit network. So a confluence of a lot of those factors, and certainly I think we're going to continue to engage and want to present as transparent a process as possible between now and ultimately that next recommendation.
And Mr. Chair, if I could ask one more question. I see that, thank you. I see that it's December 10th to January 20th. It kind of falls over holiday, a holiday time period here. Is that a hard stop, January 20th, or is that just the first level? I'm trying to remember what you said, if there's a second level of engagement that will be after January 20th. I was sort of thinking we were going into February or March with this comment period.
Chair Hovland and Member McGuire, our schedule is a little bit compressed, and certainly as we worked with TAB to adjust the timing for identifying the S line, we're very cognizant of the backstop of needing to identify something in order to align with the upcoming TIP process. And so that did force us into a bit aligning this engagement period across the holidays, but we have compensated for that by doing a much longer period than we may have done had it not spanned this time. And we're also capitalizing on the ability to kind of get the word out initially now and then do more follow-up after the holidays as folks may be more available. I will say that in the week since we've launched the survey, we have already received nearly 2,000 responses on this round, which is close to the total number of folks who engaged with our last round. So I think we're learning about how best to get the word out and doing our due diligence to try to get as many people connected to this process as possible.
And I really appreciate that. Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. And then Member Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to extend my thanks to Katie and her team. They've done an outstanding job. I think putting this information together, finding ways to look at it from a realistic, what can we build and how can we do this perspective, which I greatly appreciate. And I also want to thank all of you, because one of the big ways we were able to get to this was some of the conversations we had of really dividing up the efforts on Network Next, focusing first on the ABRT prioritization, while knowing that we're going to work on the rest of the Network Next program into next year as we work within this COVID world. So much appreciation to this group as well.
All right, good. Thank you, Member Barber. Commissioner Gattell?
Yes, and thank you very much. I want to say this looks like a really robust program of how to pick the next lines as we go down there. So I just want to thank staff, because it looks like there's a lot of analysis and a lot of information, and there'll be a lot more coming up. So my great appreciation for that. I was also very heartened to hear that you're looking at how do we go from here? How do suburbs or other places that have lines proposals that are very far down the road, how do they prepare and how do they move up to those kinds of levels? That kind of next iteration is much needed, and it sounds like you're working on that. I know that American Boulevard is something down in my district that cities have been looking at. The Richfield and Bloomington think it's a great idea, but of course it's not going to fall into the categories of the need just yet, but they want to know how they can go about planning in the right way, comp plans, redevelopment, those kinds of things. So having a path forward or a process forward is going to be really helpful as we look at the next 20 years down the road of how we grow the metro area. So just kudos for all the hard work that you're already doing. And I look forward to seeing which lines come out of this. So thank you.
Good. Thank you, Commissioner. And Ms. Roth, thank you to you and your team. You're doing really first-rate work. Thank you. All right. We have, yes, to you as well. And one more information item today. We have with us representatives from FHWA and FTA. Andrew, excuse me if I mispronounce your last name, Emmanuel. I would pronounce it without emphasizing the E at the end. And then Victor Austin from FTA. If you want to, gentlemen, if you want to introduce yourselves and give us your report out on this listening session, we'll appreciate all of that. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. My name's Andrew Emanuele. I'm a planner with the Federal Highway Administration here in Minnesota. I'm joined by my colleagues Victor Austin from FTA in Washington, D.C., and Jay Civarella, who is from Region 5 FTA. They can wave and introduce themselves. According to my calculations, I have 3 minutes to complete this, so let's buckle up because we're going at warp speed. If we can go to the first slide real quick.
We'll be more generous with time than that, Mr. Emanuele.
Sure. So we're going to talk about the Met Council's TMA certification review and what came out of it. So next slide, please. So what's the TMA certification review? Well, every 4 years, the federal government, the United States Department of Transportation, is required to go in and certify an MPO's transportation planning process. And we only look at MPOs that are over 200,000 in population, and they're called TMAs, or Transportation Management Areas. So for Minnesota, the Met Council is the only one that fits that category. They're the big dog in town. Next slide, please. So the federal agencies involved in this are FHWA and the Federal Transit Administration. We do receive support from MnDOT, the Met Council, in setting this all up and getting it together because it's a pretty heavy lift, and also regional planning partners. An important thing to note here is this is not a project-specific review. We're not going in and looking in depth at the blue line or anything like that. We're looking at the overall planning process. Next slide, please. So the methodology here, it's a pretty big endeavor. We started in the summer with a 3-month desk review. So we looked at all the relevant documents the council produces, the TPP, UPWP, MOU, CMP, whatever acronym you want to think about, acronym soup, we looked at it all. Hopefully you guys know what that all means since you're on tab here. If not, we'll talk here. We do send pertinent questions to the Met Council. They answer those for us, and we kind of hone in where we want to look at. We did have interviews with the MnDOT Central Office, Metro District, Metro Transit, the opt-out transit providers we're actually going to speak to in January, and other stakeholders as appropriate. And then we did an on-site meeting, which actually happened 2 days ago, or excuse me, for 2 days and happened a week ago, and I'll touch on that in a minute. And we will produce a final report early next year that goes into a DC database. Next page, please. So within the areas that we look at, you can have a finding. Within each general area, UPWP, whatever, you can have one of 3 findings. One would be a best practice, which is a stellar example that we want to showcase for MPOs nationally. We'd like them to do that. A recommendation that would be for something that's not a violation of a regulation or federal law, but is an area for improvement. And then the final area would be a corrective action. Corrective action would be an area where the MPO is in violation of federal law or regulations, and that would require an action plan and a timeline to complete it. Next slide, please. Real quick, some best practices from the 2016 TMA certification review. We had incorporation of equity as project selection criteria into the TIP. Not all MPOs do that. That was, we thought, especially important. I think it's even more important now with what's happened across the country, and in particular in Minneapolis. So we still think that should be echoed across the nation. Next slide, please. We had a recommendation example from 2016, updating and enhancing the public participation plan. We wanted them to discuss stakeholder engagement methods a little bit better, demonstrate a clear process for considering public comments, and document a process for evaluating the public participation plan's effectiveness, because that is a federal requirement that you periodically, is the term, go in and evaluate the effectiveness of your outreach. Next slide, please. And in 2016, corrective actions, there indeed were none. However, I will say that the congestion management process was very close. It's kind of a gray line there. It ended up being a very hard recommendation, but not a corrective action. Next slide, please.
Mr. Emanuele, I want to just comment that I think several of the mayors on the call here recognize this guy.
Yeah.
Councilman.
Who is that guy, huh? Thank you, Chairman. Next slide, please. Risk-based approach. So something important changed from 2016 to 2020. A number of MPOs said, hey, you're asking a lot of this when we're looking at every single topic in our planning process. The DOT did some internal thinking, and we changed it to a risk-based approach. So we're no longer exploring 26 topics. We're just exploring areas we think there might be some risk involved. So with this team certification review, we've isolated that down to roughly 10 areas. I say roughly because there's some overlap in the areas that we're looking at. So next slide, please. Like I said, the on-site review was conducted December 8th and 9th, so last week. I want to thank the Met Council staff for helping us put that together because it was no small list. We had to delay it a little bit to get it in an all virtual format. It did include representatives from the Met Council, FHWA, FTA, both in DC and Region 5, and MnDOT, both Metro and OTSM. It did go relatively smooth, so I want to thank them again for that. So next page, please. We're getting close. Hang in there. Couple more. Congestion management area or congestion management process. This was an area we wanted to look at in depth because of the close corrective action of 2016. We looked at all the improvements that they made from 2016, including updating their data sources to go to Streetlight, which is a better data source. Putting together a public facing website, which they're doing now, using a local agency user guide for local agencies to do corridor analysis for eventual focus incorporation into the regional solicitation. And we're also looking at a 5 to 10 year plan where they're going with the CMP. Slide, please. Another focus area we looked at was, or we're looking at, is the UPWP, Unified Planning Work Program, which is their planning funds. We're looking for a better description of how they're prioritizing their projects, what projects are selected versus what are not selected. A better description of where the funding allocation is going, federal versus local, and what they call overmatch. And then a better internal process documentation of their procedures in the case of next slide, please. And the final area I'm going to highlight today is the public participation plan. They made a lot of strides since 2016, but some areas we're still looking at in depth. Again, that evaluation of effectiveness. We'd like to see a timeline in there and an updating of the metrics used, and also better, clear indication of tribal involvement. Better process description there. Next slide, please. When this is all said and done, the Met Council's transportation planning process is either going to be fully certified, it is going to be certified subject to fixing corrective actions, or it will be not certified, subject to federal funding that would be in jeopardy. That would be in the case of corrective actions and the Met Council not taking any not doing anything to fix them. I can tell you that last one is not going to happen. Met Council staff is very good about working with this. There is a public comment period associated with this. You guys probably got the link from Elaine. It is indeed on here. You can get it from Elaine if you haven't yet. It's up for roughly 45 days. It was a short presentation and a short survey, including multiple choice questions that has an option for open-ended comments. We will take the public comments, summarize them, and use them to work to inform our final report. Next slide. So the review outcome from this, we're going to issue a final report in 2021, hoping to keep it 100 pages this time because there's a lot we got to fit in there, but with the spaced approach, I think it'll work. Met Council staff is allowed to review it prior to finalization to make sure we got all the facts correct, and if they have any changes, to let us know. The report, when it is finished, will be uploaded into a database in DC for reference and tracking of any corrective actions if indeed they do occur. And FHWA and FTA will return it to TAB in April or May of 2021 with the final results if you are so interested. Next slide. We did it. I was only 5 minutes over. I apologize for that.
Oh, you're fine. I think you did generate some definite thought amongst our members and probably some questions. So let's anyone have any questions or comments for Mr. Emanuele and his colleagues? Could you go back to on slide 8? You said we came close to corrective action on congestion management processes. That's the grumpy guy who doesn't want any change. And then over on slide 11, which is just a kind of a revisiting of that congestion management process. When you do your work in congestion management process, or that evaluation, I should say, is that an evaluation of both what the Met Council is doing and MnDOT, or who's involved in that review? What agencies are you reviewing?
We're reviewing the Met Council. An MPO that is over 200,000 is required to have a congestion management.
All right. So how can we help as the TAB? Because we've never, other than the Unified Work Plan, I don't recall where we've been asked to look at congestion management processes and comment on the same. But I think this group that is really thoughtful and wants to do continual good work would be interested in knowing how they could help on this process too.
Well, I tell you that the Met Council has done a lot of work since 2016 on this. We brought in a number of different agencies to show the Met Council how they do their CMP, their congestion management process. We had Portland come in. We had a number of other ones. So they've got a bunch of stuff going now. What we'd like to see here federally, we'd really like to see this become an eligibility criteria within the regional solicitation. Because we think when that happens, congestion will be paid on a more proper level as far as project selection. Now, the Met Council is figuring out how to do this. That's not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of things that go into it. There's a lot of questions about local agencies that need funding to conduct corridor analysis prior to the regional solicitation. So these are things we're all working out. So we'd love to have your input and thoughts on that moving forward on just how that works. So we haven't really figured out how it's going to work, but we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that's we'll add that to our list then too for the next solicitation. Is the evaluation of congestion is a factor in some of the different categories. So, questions or comments from TAB members on this? Mr. Emanuele, thanks for being with us today. And your team as well. We appreciate it, and we hope you all have a good holiday.
So everybody enjoy their eggnog.
And we'll look forward to seeing you back here in a few months.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, all you guys, here we are next week, Christmas week, holiday week going up for other folks as well, or holiday times. So I just want to tell all you to have a wonderful holiday season. It's been just a pleasure working with all of you. Just wonderful, wonderful people. And look forward to seeing you after the first of the year. I don't know if anybody else has anything for the good of the order, but we got some people dressed in red already. Commissioner McGuire and Mayor Mary, they're ready for the holidays.
I gotta, Mr. Chair, it's a tradition. I wear my holiday ties.
Remember to
first of all, I gotta wear them horizontal to have them displayed, so I have to point it out.
And remember, Crimmins had his holiday glasses on. So, all right. Well, good to see all of you. Thanks for the great work today. Mayor Winchittle?
I had a note on here that we were going to have a meeting after this. Is that still happening? I had something about, you talked about getting together after, and I had no clue, but I put a placeholder in there. So that's not happening then?
Commissioner McGuire and then Elaine.
Chair, on this, I was just going to say that on my calendar, and I was going to ask if someone has the contact information. There's a webinar on transit governance reform that Commissioner McDonough is speaking on. I don't know where the link is for that, but someone mentioned that at our last meeting, and I wrote it in my calendar as well. That there's a meeting going on right after this, but I don't know if that's the one you're referring that's being referred.
Something in there from 3 to 4. You said that we were going to have a meeting
Oh, I can address this.
All right, go ahead, Elaine.
The discussion last month was whether to have a separate meeting or attach the item at the end, and that was the FHWA FTA listening session. And so instead of setting up a separate link and meeting announcement, we just attached it at the end of the tab agenda.
Okay.
And so is there something you want us to be doing now, Elaine, to Mayor Winchell's point?
No, that we just added it as the second information item instead of a separate item, separate meeting.
All right, I'm with you. Yeah, that's what I. Okay.
And then, so Mr. Chair, in answer to my question, does anyone know where to go for this other meeting? Does anyone know about the webinar on transit governance reform? But if no one else knows, I'll figure out a way to find it then. Okay.
Yeah. I never seen anything on that one.
I think Member Hollinshead has a comment.
I'd like to know about that as well, Mary Jo, if you do find a link.
Yeah, I'll look for it. It's a go-to webinar, and I've just got to find the link. So, okay.
Deb Barber just put it in the chat.
Oh, great. Thanks, Deb.
I can find
Whether you can take it from the chat and go right there, I have no idea.
Yes, you can.
You'd have to copy the link.
Actually, you can just click on it, and it goes right there.
There you go.
So, everybody click on it and just hold that screen aside.
All right, everybody. Thanks for getting together today. Thanks for all your good work. And we'll
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye, thank you.
Bye. Yep, thanks.